Hello and welcome to the program. On February 5th in 1992, shortly after Ukraine gained its independence, began the start of the diplomatic relations between Norway and Ukraine. Now the Nordic country continues to distinguish itself as one of Ukraine's best allies. Bilateral trade between the two countries was estimated at $248 million in 2018. Now to discuss the most recent developments in Ukrainian-Norwegian partnerships, we're honored to welcome to the studio today Ole Terje Horpestad, Ambassador of Norway to Ukraine. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So the first question, there has been recently a forum, the Norwegian-Ukrainian Business Forum, which took place at the end of January. So Ukraine and Norway have signed preliminary contracts worth around 1.5 billion USD. That's a lot of investment. What interests Norway in the Ukrainian market right now?
Well, first of all, let me say that the business forum, which was opened by the Prime Minister of Norway and the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Erna Solberg and Volodymyr Groysman, on the 28th of January, was a token of the interest that Norwegian business now shows to Ukraine. There was a record number of business associations, business people, industry from both Norway and Ukraine, about 350 participants altogether. The forum was opened by the two prime ministers, and in the margins of the forum, or in the presence of the prime ministers, 5 agreements were signed, as you say, for the quite substantial amount of altogether $1.5 billion US. So the biggest ones are in renewable energy. Now, one company called NBT signed a contract or an agreement on building a huge wind plant in Yakimovsky area in southern Ukraine. They already are active in Kherson, building the so far biggest wind plant in Ukraine around Lake Sivash. And the second one was another company called Scatec Solar, which is a big company in solar panels. So they are also already active here in Cherkasy Oblast, and now they signed a new contract for building in Mykolaiv Oblast, also in the south, where you have a lot of sun, you have a lot of wind, and great conditions for producing renewable energy. Another small one also for Kiev from Norsk Solar, and also quite different genetics, cattle breeding. Also an interesting new field of cooperation, as well as another agreement on ICT startups and smart technology for mobile phones and iPads and so on. So it shows quite a big range of interest.
The renewable energy sector is actually quite interesting. As you said, there is wind, there is sun. Do you think that this kind of Norwegian investment and this booming sector of energy could maybe on the long term help Ukraine on its energy, let's say, independence towards Russia, for example?
Yeah, Ukraine has an ambitious goal on increasing the part of energy or the renewable energy in its total energy production and consumption. And these big investments in renewable energy, they are stimulated by the so-called green tariffs, which have been introduced by the Ukrainian governments, which makes the investment conditions quite good for investors in this field. So I think that's one of the motivations, is to both produce clean energy. That's important for the climate and the CO2 emissions, and also to increase the renewable energy part in the total energy consumption, and as well reduce or increase rather the energy independence of Ukraine. So all these are important factors, combined factors. And the Norwegian companies which I mentioned have good competence from other parts of the world in these kind of wind parks, solar parks. We also have others looking into hydropower. So this is really a good reflection of both the competence Norway has and how we can contribute to Ukraine, to Ukraine and improving the energy consumption in Ukraine.
Now we talked a little bit about energy. We'll go back to energy and economics in a moment. But What can you define politically? I mean, the priorities in the Ukrainian-Norwegian political cooperation right now?
I would say that our cooperation has been really strengthened over the last 4 or 5 years since Euromaidan. We have had a very intense exchange of political visits. Now this last year we have had several high-level visits, both coming into Kiev and now lately the Ukrainian Prime Minister visiting Norway. So this shows that our political contacts and relations and our dialogue is pretty tight and good, and that's very highly appreciated. We are a friend and supporter and partner of Ukraine. We support Ukrainian European choice, the ambitions for Euro and Euro-Atlantic integration. We support, of course, clearly Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity within internationally recognized borders, and we have condemned the Russian illegal acts in eastern Ukraine and Crimea, and have the sanctions against the Russian Federation in this regard. So this is the basis for our bilateral relations, and what is very positive to see now is that the good political relations we have are also now followed up by industry. So they make now concrete investments, as we have talked about. And that brings our relations another important step forward, I think.
So you would say that both are like basically working with the other in this matter?
I think business is always looking at interesting emerging markets
and stable markets.
Yeah, and Ukraine is a big market. It's close to Norway. It's an economy in development. It has a great potential, and the Ukrainian reform program has improved in many ways the business climate here. That's a clear message from our Norwegian companies that they couldn't have made these investments maybe 5 years ago, so now they make them now. So it's a token that things are moving in the right direction. Still, there are important tasks still to be accomplished by the Ukrainian side, like reforming the justice system, fighting corruption, have courts which are reliable and predictable. So all in all, stable and predictable conditions for investors is very important. So a lot has been done, and things are moving in a good direction. So there are still challenges ahead to solve as well.
You raised the aggression of Russia in eastern Ukraine issue. Humanitarian crisis is looming, of course, because of the war. And Norway is helping Ukraine on the matter on humanitarian. How does it do so?
We have a quite broad support program for Ukraine, which is about 20 million euros per year in 3 main fields. It's energy efficiency, which we have already touched upon. The second one is good governance, rule of law, judicial reforms. And the third one is trade facilitation, or I might say Euro integration, and stimulation of economic reforms. And the fourth, which is also very important, unfortunately very needed as well, is the humanitarian support program. So all in all, as I said, 20 million euros, and the humanitarian side is about 5 million euros per year, where we work through various international organizations, Norwegians and UN and ICRC and others. And actually I'm going to eastern Ukraine next week to visit some other projects which are run by...
Where exactly?
I'm going to Luhansk, on the government-controlled side of Luhansk Oblast, meeting with the governor there and visiting projects which are run by the Norwegian Refugee Council and the UN Women and others as well.
Well, now, as you said, you talked about challenges and what needs to be improved in Ukraine. It's a turning point for Ukraine in March, basically, because you have the elections, new presidential elections in Ukraine. Who whoever is the candidate who wins, whoever the president, how will the relation between Norway and Ukraine unfold in any case scenario? Will it continue like that? How do you forecast this?
Well, I think Norway is a stable partner for Ukraine, and we will continue being active in Ukraine and work in Ukraine, both with our projects, which are all kind of long-term projects, 3-year projects, most of them, also with the business. And I'm confident that Ukraine's direction towards European integration will continue. It's now even been
inscribed into
been adopted as part of the Ukrainian constitution, so there's no doubt about the geopolitical choice of Ukraine, which we support very much. So I don't see any other any reason why we should not continue to work with Ukraine also in the years to come, and a Ukraine which is successful economically, politically, and reaches its ambitions and goals is important for us, for Europe, for the Ukrainian people, and Norway is here to assist Ukraine on this path towards this the goal.
Now, and to conclude this interview, what's the next step? Are there like other investment coming? Is there another forum coming? Is there what's scheduled, let's say?
Yeah. Well, I can mention maybe that during the visit in Oslo, Prime Minister Groisman and Prime Minister Solberg signed a joint declaration on enhanced energy cooperation. So we will be even more active in the energy field now, support energy reforms in Ukraine, like corporate governance reforms, for instance, energy efficiency projects. We launched a new energy efficiency initiative, which is aiming at reducing energy consumption in public buildings. We're working then with an organization called NEFCO all around the country for financing these projects. Also, we have a cooperation on nuclear safety and nuclear security, which is also an important part of this total energy package, where we are now putting even greater emphasis on this year and coming time. Yeah.
Well, thank you for this overview on the relations between Ukraine and Norway. It was a pleasure to welcome you in our studio today.
Thank you very much.
That was Ole Terje Horpestad. He's ambassador of Norway to Ukraine. Thank you for watching Head to Head. Stay tuned for more.